Welcome to Inside Criminal Minds, the channel that will guide you through the darkest corners of the human mind. This is part 2 of episode 1, Ed Kemper's story. So let's get back where we left off. We had Kemper returning from the California Youth Authority at age 21 after murdering his grandparents. He had great hope for the future. It was decided by the authorities that Kemper had to stay with his mom and attend community college, which he did. He had dreams of becoming a policeman, but he couldn't because, he was too tall, so he was rejected. Despite that, he became sort of friends with the police officers, and they would often hang out together at the local pub, just spending time together. His relationship with his mom was still very, let's say, toxic. He said they had violent and vicious battles, and even when he started living on his own, she would always call him and show up uninvited to his house. And now, I'm not trying to justify her behavior. Usually this would be a no from me, but I can imagine she was worried about her son because of his past and what he had done. So maybe this is how she thought she could make sure he was on the right track, right? Or maybe she was just a control freak, I don't know. But he frequently had to return to her apartment as well because he didn't really have a stable job. So he never had the chance to take enough distance from this difficult relationship. But most importantly, during all this time, he never stopped having very dark thoughts. In fact, he would pick up young and female hitchhikers while having handcuffs, blankets, and knives in his car. Then he would just let them go, and he said he did this at least 150 times. So at this point, he had done nothing, okay? He just had these thoughts and all these things in his car, but he never hurt anyone. That's until the 7th of May, 1972, when two young girls, they were 18 and 19, went missing. They were roommates and college students. Their names were Mary Ann Pesce and Anita Luquessa. They were hitchhiking to Stanford University, and they were picked up by Ed Kemper, unfortunately. Let's talk about Mary Ann first. So she was not only a very good student, but also an excellent athlete. She could ski very well, and she aspired to try out for the Olympics. And when she was picked up by Kemper, he changed directions because he realized the girls were unfamiliar with the area. So he stopped in a remote place, and they only started getting really worried at this point when he stopped the car. The girls were handcuffed, and he also put a plastic bag over their heads. Then he locked Anita in the trunk. He thought it would be very easy to suffocate Mary Ann, but the plastic bag broke, and she fought back really hard. So what he had to do is he had to stab her multiple times. And while confessing to the murder, he said something I found particularly disturbing, which is he wanted to stab her in the heart to make it quick. But it would have been embarrassing because her breasts were there. Now that's insane, in my opinion. How are you embarrassed by the girl's breasts when you are literally killing her? You're literally taking her life. But back to the story. In the meantime, Anita had bitten through the bag, and she had understood that something was going on, something really bad was going on, and she asked about her friend. Kemper replied that he had broken her nose because she was getting on his nerves, and that she should help her friend. As Anita got closer, he attacked her. Now, I won't get into too much detail because In my personal opinion, it's not respectful to the victims, and also it's not necessary. My purpose is to try and understand criminal minds with you guys, so I'll always share details that are relevant to this end, so not morbid details. If you'd like to read more, you can find the case at edmundkemperstories.com. It's a very well written blog. Their purpose is also to better understand this criminal, so they document the case very accurately, and they've been a great reference to me while working on this episode. Anyway, so Anita was a fighter. Kemper said she was actually fighting him and almost succeeding, and I'm quoting him, okay? So he imagined how much strength she had inside of her. Remember, she was being attacked, and we know when we're not prepared to fight, right? So we are weaker, obviously. But also, Kemper was a very big man. So, of course, he was too strong, and she wasn't really prepared to be attacked. So he managed to stab her to death. Fast forward to September 14th, 1972. 15-year-old Aiko Hu was waiting for the bus that would take her to a dance lesson. However, the bus was late, and she was so worried because she really didn't want to be late. She wanted to have a career in Korean folk dance, and she was already quite popular. In fact, she toured around the country wearing beautiful costumes that her grandma made for her. And I think we also have some photos to share on social media, on Instagram specifically, that you can see. So she decided to hitchhike, and Ed Kemper picked her up. As for Mary Ann and Anita, he took advantage of the complicated system of highway interchanges to disorient Aiko. So when she realized what he was doing, she obviously panicked and started screaming. So he took out a gun and threatened Aiko, saying he just wanted to kill himself and needed someone to talk to him. So this sort of calmed her down despite the gun, and she stopped screaming. He then stopped the car and placed like a patch on her mouth. He made her sit in the back seat, and he shoved the gun under the front seat. This is an important detail. Then he got out of the car and he walked around, like to the passenger side. When he tried to open Aiko's door, he realized it was locked. So, as many of you probably already know, back in those days, if you forgot your keys inside your car, you were locked outside. Like, you had no way of getting in, except, of course, like breaking the window, but it was a bit complicated. So the gun was still in front of Aiko, okay? Kemper was locked outside, and as he started like frantically fishing in his pocket for his keys, she looked at him through the window and she shook her head, like as if to say, you won't find the keys in that pocket. So she knew she had an advantage, she knew she had a gun, but she unlocked the door for him, so she let him in. This might sound crazy, but she probably believed that he wanted to unalive himself, and maybe she wanted to help because she had a good heart. For whatever reason, she did it. She definitely didn't think he would strangle her, abuse her, and decapitate her. He also removed her hands, which is an interesting detail because if you remember from episode 1, this is what he used to do with his sister's dolls, right? He kept the head in their car for days. He went to a bar, he visited a psychiatrist, he spent some time with his mom and even with his fiancée. Yes, he had a fiancée, and with her family. Now, moving on to Cindy Scholl, who was Ed Kemper's fourth co-ed victim. He drove her into the hills near Watsonville, and then he forced her into the trunk of his car again, like he did with the other girls, and he shot her in the head with his gun. She died on January the 8th, 1973, and she was only 18. She studied, she worked as a babysitter, and she wanted to become either a teacher or a policewoman. In both cases, she wanted to do what she loved the most, which is helping people. But unfortunately, she was not Kemper's last victim, because Alice Helen Liu was a 21-year-old student who went missing on the 5th of February 1973. She had great dreams. She wanted to become a teacher and she was interested in Oriental studies. She cared deeply about people. We have one of her writings from high school where she explained that she wanted to change the world. The provost of one of her colleges, Robert Edgar, said she was bright and lively. Like a bird, she was full of song, which I think is a beautiful way to remember her. Unfortunately, her decapitated body was found 2 weeks after she disappeared, together with the body of Rosalind Thorpe. At the time of her death, Rosalind was 23 and she was completing her studies in linguistics and psychology. She was very smart, kind, and everyone seemed to like her. She was just that kind of person. Rosalind usually went to her university classes by bike, but on the day she disappeared, it was raining, so unfortunately she hitchhiked. All of these girls were hitchhikers, and that's how they fell in the hands of their killer. And I know maybe you're thinking it was an irresponsible choice to hitchhike, but these were the 70s. Not only were people more naive, in a way, but also public transport wasn't the way it is today, and other options were not affordable. Remember, we're talking about college students, right? Also, they didn't have mobile phones, which we have today, and there was nothing else they could do except trust these strangers. Of course, we now have much better options, so please don't get in the car of a stranger. If, for some reason, there's nothing else you can do, please be very careful and stay safe. Now, investigators knew that if not all these girls, at least most of them had been killed by the same person. Because of the MO, the modus operandi was the same, right? So the autopsies had revealed identical cutting techniques, and also the way the killer had disposed of the bodies. It was the same in each case, so they knew they were looking for one individual. Now, another important detail to consider is that Kemper had organized his car in a way that it was easier for him to carry out his crimes, right? So he had jammed the passenger door to trap his victims inside his car. For example, when they got in, as soon as they got in, he would say, "Oh, your door is not shut properly." And so he would slip something, an object, usually it was a chapstick tube, into the locking mechanism. And obviously, it was impossible at that point to open the door from inside. But also he had, this is very important I think, he had an A sticker. It was given to him by his mom because she worked at university. And with the sticker, he could easily get into campus to pick her up from work. And of course, the sticker gave the girls a feeling of safety, and they felt like they could trust the man offering them a ride because he had the sticker. Now, fast forward to April 21st, 1973. Edmund Kemper was asleep in his mother's house when she got back home after dinner with her friends, and he woke up and went to say hello. She said they would speak in the morning, and they both went back to bed. He, however, remained awake. He said he was planning to confess his crimes, And he kept thinking he didn't want his mom to carry all that emotional weight, which is an incredibly arrogant thought, I think, because, yeah, you might be worried about the emotional weight she might have to carry, but you still don't get to decide that she'd rather die than live with that weight, right? Well, he believed she'd rather die. He also said he didn't want her to suffer, so he hit her with a hammer while she slept, and then he slit her throat. He explained in court that killing her wasn't enough, so he did way worse. He cut off his mother's head and he, I'm quoting him, put it on a shelf and screamed at it for hours. He then threw darts at it and he then cut her tongue out. He did even worse than this, but I honestly don't feel like it's necessary to share all that. So again, you can find more details online if you want to. So his last victim was Sarah Sally Taylor Hallett. She was also his mom's best friend. She was 59 and she had 2 sons. After killing and decapitating his mother, he decided it was a Saturday, the morning before Easter, to telephone Sarah saying he wanted to surprise his mom. So he said, "I would like to take you both out for dinner." She obviously accepted and she was very happy to go to their house, so she immediately got ready to go. As he was waiting for her, he distributed weapons around the apartment, but in the end, none of them would be necessary for what he wanted to do. Soon after the phone call, she arrived, and he said, I'm quoting him, "I came up behind her and crooked my arm around her neck, like this." And then he showed the way he crooked the arm. He said he just squeezed and lifted her off the floor. At that point, she died. Basically, he broke her neck. And he said her head was just wobbling around. Again, I'm quoting him. So obviously, he realized she had already died. Later that night, he did horrible things to her body. And the next day, he fled in her car. He said he had to kill a friend of his mother as an excuse. Basically, he needed to provide like a reasonable story for friends of his mother to explain her absence. If she were away on a trip with a friend, he thought nobody would be concerned about her absence. In 2017, at the parole hearing, he actually gave a different explanation. He said it was like revenge for ruining his mother's holiday because basically they had plans to go to Europe together for 4 weeks. But Sally backed out at the last minute. And he explained, I'm going to quote him again, "I had told myself that if my mother ever died over this stuff that I did, Sally's going with her. That's one trip she's not gonna miss. She's not gonna back off on that one. I swore an oath to it. I was angry at the time. I haven't sworn many oaths in my life, and everyone that I have sworn, I followed through with." Again, this is something that could only make sense in his twisted mind, honestly. His confession was very detailed, and he was found to be mentally sane. He asked for a death penalty, but at the time it was suspended in California, so he was condemned to life in prison. He was eligible for parole, which was always denied, of course. The last one was in 2024. He is very sick but still alive at the moment, as I'm recording this episode. And apparently he's a model prisoner, which of course doesn't change anything, so he'll spend the rest of his existence in jail, as he should. Over the years, he was interviewed so many times by everyone, journalists, psychiatrists, FBI agents, experts in general. And the reason why they did this is that he is very reliable. Usually, serial killers lie and try to manipulate you, so they're not a reliable source of information about the motives of their crimes. But Ed Kemper has always been very open, and he believes, and so do experts, that he only killed women because it's his mother he truly wanted to kill. This is also the reason why he turned himself in after her death. He said, quote unquote, that the original purpose was gone. This might make you wonder if he could stop being a threat to society now. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. All that anger and that desire for violence and death are rooted inside of him. He is too dangerous to be released. What I can't figure out is why he didn't, channel all that anger into sports. He was so tall and strong. I feel like he could have had any career in that sense in sports. Not to mention how intelligent he is. He had the potential many people wished they had to realize their dreams. And I know that mental issues got in the way, but in this case it was also a choice. He chose darkness. So many people have horrible parents, horrible families, and they go through very traumatic events, and yet they choose to inspire others to work on themselves, and definitely they don't become a threat to society. Anyways, we've been telling this story for decades now, and I think it's time we remember these girls for who they were and not for what happened to them. They were bright, kind, loving and loved young women with big dreams and big hearts. They were ripped of the possibility to live their lives and shape their future. But if there is something we can do in their name and in the name of victims in general, it's to educate ourselves and create a better society. Now, I would really like to know your opinions and questions. Please share them in the comments if you want, or on Instagram. If you're still listening, I'd like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please make sure to follow our Instagram page, Inside Criminal Minds, if you haven't already, and stay tuned for the next episode. Stay safe and take care. Thank you.